Now, in order to start looking at sales from a scientific perspective, I first got to learn, like, why does it operate the way it operates today? Why are certain things, if I want to get to $1 to $10 million, why are certain things breaking? What is breaking primarily from $1 to $10 million is that you are in the superstar sales mode. Now, superstar sales means that you're dependent on very few people that are helping you generate the business. In those early rounds, right around 1 to 2 million, you may even be in a realm of founder sales, where founders really are still carrying the lion's share, and founders act and behave as a superstar. Now, one of the problems with superstar sales is that it does the following. In the superstar sales mode, we are relying on a principle called the Pareto principle. And the Pareto principle works as follows. 20% of the people generate 80% of the business. This comes from Pareto, which is an Italian landowner who said 20% of the people own 80% of the land. Now today what we see, most sales in those early days, in the early 1, 2, 3 million, few people create lots of revenue. The 20-80 rule applies. As you start to move forward and as you get more and more salespeople and closer to the $10 million, you see that the 20-80 no longer start to apply for one very common reason. In SaaS, the price of the product drops. So instead of like traditionally having $1 million product, in SaaS, that price may drop to 20K, like, you know, like or less, right? 5, 10, 15K. That means that when I'm a sales professional, I cannot easily make up, let's say there's a $10 million quota, right? 10 million ARR. Let's say that in the current year I generate 5 million. In case of a 20-80 rule with lots of with a high ACV, I only have to close 5 deals, right? It's year 2, year 3. In order to go from 5 million ARR to 10 million, I close $5 million deals, great. But there's not a lot of $1 million deals around there, right? And so we got to think about it differently. What we see, an operation of 20K, suddenly, I need to close a lot more deals, right? I need to close, what, 5 for 100, and that means I need to close $50 for $1 million, and if I have to close a couple of $1 million gap, let's say I close a $5 million gap, I need to close 250 accounts, okay? 250 versus 5. That is a big difference. What is happening with the Pareto principle is that traditionally in SaaS sales, recurring revenue sales, as you go towards the $10 million, it stopped working. What we see is it becomes more 80-80. What I mean with that is 80% of the sales team now generates 80% of the revenue. That superstar 20 are no longer making a big dent, and so that 20 makes 20% of the revenue, leaving the B performers to create 80-80. Well, in this example down here, when we did 20-80, the B performers, the remaining 80, did 20% of the revenue, right? The remaining 80 did 20% in situation number 1. In situation number 2, my B performers have to create 80%. That is 4x, 4 times the revenue they have to create, 4 times. That is a big gap. That happens everywhere, and what we see that sales organizations are not very set to produce this kind of revenue because they're still based on superstars, and superstars don't need a lot of training, and superstars don't need process, they create process, and superstars are self-motivated. Superstars are top-notch, they find a way. All these things make superstars superstars, but since you can't scale on them anymore because the price dropped, you're at $10 million. Your revenue has become dependent, and your ability to hit those numbers has become dependent on the B performers. Now, we call them the B performers. You may call them A- performers. I think that I don't want to give that a negative tonation. It's just like, look, not everybody has to be a superstar. You need to have a lot of other people that are performing there. And so that is rule number 1. I have gone from 20-80 to 80-80. Okay? Now, second thing that I have started to do is what I find is in revenue, I draw the revenue chart down here, and I get the commit down here, and second part of the funnel, like what we see down here, we often call this land, and we call this expand. Now, in the land mode, we create 3 phases: awareness, education, selection. Okay? Then we do onboarding. Customer then starts to use it. And guess what we do after that? We grow, we upsell, we cross-sell, or we renew. 3 things. Upsell, cross-sell, renew. Right? So we have these 3 things. We see down here that traditionally, in the old days, revenue came in here. So when we committed, in the old days, and in many businesses, the revenue came in right here. Well, we see that obviously with SaaS sales, revenue and profits has shifted all the way up here. The bigger revenue comes here. So I get little dollars here, but I get big dollars down here. Seems, I know you guys know all these, right? I know. But guess what? If I see where the lion's share of my people are focused, the lion's share of my most valued resources are all in selection. And if I compare that to where the lion's share of all my marketing campaigns is located, and I just use an email signal down here, right? But if I see where all those marketing campaigns are right here. Okay, marketing campaigns are all focused here. Their efforts here. Sales is focused here, but the revenue is here. It has created a misalignment. For you to hit $10 million, we got to align these things up. How do we make sure that the people down here who are opposed, how do we line them up? They need to be taught and trained. The very same principles that the folks down here have been taught on. They need to be taught and trained, or marketing needs to extend their marketing campaigns equally all the way down here. The revenue and profits are here, and it takes a while to achieve those. We can't stop investing in quality marketing campaigns all the way up here and stop investing quality people down here. Those quality people and quality marketing campaigns also need to go down here. This has shifted and needs to be realigned. So I'm going to add number 2 to the board. And number 2 is that we need to align customer success with upsell, cross-sell, and renewal. That needs to happen. It's the next thing. Now, that is not just enough. That is only the second change. I'm going to end up at about 4 or 5 or so. Okay, so now I'm going to raise this. I'm going to move to the next challenge that we're dealing with. What we also see is that if I look at the speed of selling and I draw this out and I see at which particular point in time speed occurs, then previously, like it took me, like what, 9 to 18 months to close a deal. And so a lot of enterprise deals happen around this time frame. And what we're now dealing with is a lot of times, a lot of deals are happening right around this time frame. And that, for some of you, it's less than 30, but it's, the bell curve is somewhere between 30 and 90 days, and it extends a little bit to 6 months for the bigger service, for the bigger, more expensive services. But what we see is that this has shifted radically there. It has become significantly faster, shorter sales cycles, okay? Faster, shorter sales cycles. And like anything, when we put it under the pressure of time, when we start moving things faster, it becomes really, really complicated. I used to be a boxer, not a good one, but I used to be a Muay Thai fighter. And so as I was fighting and I was practicing, it's very easy, right? On that, like heavy back, it doesn't punch back. Speed is one thing, but when you go into the ring, speed changes everything. Your opponent is so fast. Things are happening so fast. You literally get fatigued purely because of the speed. Speed is very, very complicated. So what we say, if I add this up, 80-80 means that our B performers have to outperform by 4x their previous generation. We need to not only align on the salespeople, but selling now occurs all across from beginning to end. So we need to train everybody in the organization on sales. And on top of that, sales has gotten faster. Everything has gotten faster, faster, faster. With revenue shifting, with this speed, we know that in order to do so, we got to make a change. And what we do is we make a change. If I draw that same funnel again, I make it square this time. And what we do in order to be successful, and in order to what we need to do to, like at $1 million, we go down here, land, right here, land, expand, okay? And in the founder sales mode, you know, like sometimes if you have two founders, one is really focused on winning customers, the other really is focused on helping the customers, or a second very senior person does that. But the land and expand mode, as soon as we start to grow, you know, what we start to see is that salesperson, that founder says, you know what, I need help. So we're going to get a salesperson focused on here, generally in AE. And then after that, that founder is going to say, hey, you know, the AE says, look, I actually need some help too. And they may add an SDR. We're going to split that up. And then what we realize is, hey, you know what? We not only need to split up SDR and AE, because, you know, like those are two different roles. We actually start to split up and say, like, hey, we have two different markets. I got, you know, like enterprise, and at $10 million, you probably get two markets. You got SMB, you got enterprise. So now I got two kind of roles of SDRs, two kind of roles of AEs. Then at $10 million, what I also see is I start to split up the role after this. I may at first have onboarding, and then I have the customer success management. Now, if I get beyond 10, then I even split this further up, and this becomes account management. Now you see the role starts to split. If the accounts become bigger, then once again, I split them to the middle, and I get two markets, right? So now I got the onboarder, I got the CSM. On enterprise, I got senior CSM, senior account managers. Although on the smaller accounts in the SMB, I may choose not to have an account manager, and I may just use a CSM and an onboarder. So I start to build what we call a go-to-market staffing plan. And I know what my program is. On the SMB, I'm going to run an inbound marketing campaign. On the enterprise, I'm going to run an outbound or a reference or an ABM program from the last session. We'll use an ABM program to target that. There's an ABM program here, an inbound program here. I staff it. This is called, and what is the next point, is a specialization. So the speed went up, and now I'm going to start becoming specialized. This specialization is a splitting of the functions, more and more specialized role. For those of you who are actually also sell a technical solution, you may find that you have a role down here, something called a sales engineer or solutions engineer or solutions architect or something like that. They bridge that gap from helping a customer understand the technicalities before the deal and helping them during the onboarding cycle. It's the same person. It's the voice of truth, the voice of reason, right? And you know, like so, we have a role that bridges that left to the right, that land to expand. What we see is that in today's world, in order to create, you make your B performer successful, you got to give them a specialized role. Then they can speed up because you know they do only what they do. And then as we grow on, and as we become more and more specialized, then we are starting to need more and more common communication from one to another. Now, so I got specialization, and I'm going to explain to you, specialize. I'm going to explain to you why specialization is so important. And I'm going to do that from the prospecting versus the selling. Now, see what happens here? If I start, I'm going to have two axes. Below this line, I'm prospecting. Above this line, I'm selling. So I am a single salesperson at $1 million. We have one salesperson. What we start to do, we start prospecting. And obviously, I need to do a lot of prospecting. So I start prospecting. You look, oh, I'm doing prospecting great, right? Doing so great that actually I need to start selling. So I start selling. At some point in time, I am selling so much, I'm not prospecting anymore. And so once I've closed all of these, I have my pipeline, I start to get, oh, I need prospecting. And then my pipeline is full, I start selling. And so I go up and down. You see how this moves? Up and down. What this essentially is doing is two things. First of all, the deals that you prospected here are starting to close here. And so in some cases, you delay your sales cycle. And you delay it by about 1.5, 1.6x. You delay that because you were prospecting and then you're selling. You didn't do it at the same time. That's one. Now, the other thing that we found that is really troublesome is that you essentially are not prospecting here. Sorry, you're not selling here. You're not prospecting here. And so what we have an ineffective or in this case, inefficient use of your time. Wouldn't it make more sense if we have one person specialized on prospecting, right, doing nothing but prospecting here, prospecting, and the other person above the line does nothing but selling, right? And so that is the role of specialization. One specializes on this, the other specializes on that. Now, I want to show you, share with you, the impact of that is, okay? Watch this. So I'm going to create that cycle, and let's say I have a 30-day sales cycle, okay? Just for ease of understanding, right? So in this particular case, all the red is prospecting, and all the blue is selling. This is or green. All the green is selling, right? Now let's say that I have a 30-day sales cycle, and that 3 of these little bubbles equal 1 quarter. Q1, Q2. How many quarters did how many months was I selling? 1 out of 3. How many months was I selling? 2 out of 3. And so you see that you see that person, because they're prospecting and selling, you see the behavior fluctuate. They don't do anything different. They do their best. This is science that tells us what this is. Now, this is on a 30-day cycle. Obviously, this is offset with a 40-day, 60, 90 cycle. So you have to understand if this is 30 days, right? In this case, from prospecting to selling is 30 days. If the sales cycle is longer, this is further offset. And that's why you see the behavior shift every month, every quarter. You can't explain it. This is why. Now, in order to fix that, you separate that. You separate prospecting and selling. You make those 2 different things. However, and this is a big thing, we ran into a problem doing this. Since 2014 and 15, we started, since about 2014, 15, we started to see a huge impact. And the impact was as follows. What we started to see is that traditionally, SDRs were generating right about, give or take, 20, 22 SQLs, sales qualified leads, per month, 20 to 22. But starting 2014, 15, they started to drop. Today, in many places, we see that SDRs are right at about 10 to 12 SQLs per person. Now, GDPR, we expect that because of GDPR, this is going to drop even further, but this is, using automated tools made it drop, using volume-based outbound with a lot of people doing this made it drop. A lot of reasons made this drop. And so we have to fix that. We're going to come back to that in a second, how we're going to fix that. And so this is a problem. And this problem is worldwide. We see it in Brazil, we see it in the UK, we see it in the Netherlands, we see it in Australia, we see it in China. This problem is everywhere, and it's simple. We're simply sending too many emails to these folks. Folks swipe left on the phone. GDPR is going to protect that, so it's going to fall even lower than that. This is a challenge we have to tackle today. Okay? Any sales professional, this is one of the key things that, as they say, the proverbial will keep you up at night. Okay, so there you have it. 2080 to 8080 means we're dependent on the B performers. Revenue is in the future, so we need customer success and the customer success team to be responsible for upselling and cross-selling. We need to speed up the sales process, right? Or the sales process is speeding up, so we need to make sure that we can address that. In other words, online selling. We need to have a specialized sales force that can run all these specific functions.